And we're live for one more edition of Auditory Osmosis. Episode 3 here tonight, folks. And if you've been following along on the YouTube, you would know that.
We're at the Google Hangouts.
And
proudly sponsored by Google right now.
I'm quite fond of the Goo Goo Gaga Google.
You like the Goo Goo Gaga Google.
Compared to Skype, you know, it's a nice platform.
Well, we got to start somewhere, and we started somewhere. Now we're moving on up. Right? So what's up, buddy?
Absolutely. What's up?
How was your day after work?
Everything's up. Sorry, I was answering the first question. My day after work. Shit, that would be the night. Let me check my journal.
Your day after work would be nice. So how was your evening after work? Let me rephrase.
Let me just check my journal entry.
Wow, you have that many entries already this afternoon?
There it is.
That was like 47 pages back.
Yeah, a lot of things happen in 3 hours.
Yeah, that's true. Go on.
Well, I got home. I checked my email.
Ooh.
I watered my tomato plants. I'm growing some sucroy tomatoes and some cherry tomatoes.
Beautiful.
And I'm getting ready for that storm. Everybody's talking about a storm coming tomorrow, or at least a rainy day.
It's a brewing.
So I had to get everything prepared for rain in case it, the flood comes and drowns my tomatoes.
Well, that's why we make an arc, right?
Exactly. And I was talking to basically something that was sent from God. And it told me that this flood may wipe out my tomato plants.
That's crazy.
Exactly. No, I went on the internet and I usually check the news. And you may have heard me say this before, but I don't go to one source, right? I go to multiple sources.
Wait, you go to multiple sources and you kind of like weigh all the information and you make your own decisions and what's going on, or what is this? Free thinking?
Yeah, you could call it that, but
Sure.
I refrain from using that terminology because that incriminates me in some. Exactly. You don't want to say free thinking. Free thinking is not allowed. So I allow the machine to think for me. No, I see news as a mosaic, right? If you want to know what's going on in your world, don't go to one source, because if you're going to one source, that's one piece of the mosaic, if you're following that analogy.
Right.
So I like to feel the process out, and I like to touch all the different patterns with my senses. And I go to CNN, I go to Fox News, I check all the mainstream sites, NBC, CBS. I go to Google News, I see what's trending. I go to underground websites. I go to obscure fringe conspiracy sites. And all of this data builds the big picture, the big picture. And
big picture.
Then you use your thought muscles to form an original idea.
Thought muscles.
You cross-reference with all of your sources, and you come away with your own kind of view of what's going on in the world.
Okay.
And see, when you go to one source, you're coming away with their little view of what's going on in the world.
Roger. And
we could get into like how the New York Times has to be curtailed according to Homeland Security policy.
Okay.
So some of the articles that really pierced my my thought patterns, I will read the headlines. Elon Musk basically thinks we're living in The Sims. Here's why that's wrong and dangerous. This is an opinion piece from Mashable. I'm not going to read his opinion piece. I want to focus on the idea that Elon Musk thinks that we're living in a computer simulation. Second article, can machines make music? Google is trying. Google has a project that uses algorithms to try to develop music, but critics question whether a machine could ever really create art. That's the Christian Science Monitor, and don't be deceived by the Christian part of their name. They're a news source that a lot of people go to them. Last, coming out of NPR, scientists say they hope to create a human genome in the lab. I've been kind of babbling about this for the last week because it's been floating around ever since these scientists met in secret away from the press behind closed doors to discuss developing the human genome from scratch synthetically. Well, here again, one more article that is discussing the possibility of doing such things. But I'd like to start with the Elon Musk, because I know you're fond of Elon Musk as a personality and as an entrepreneur. He has a lot of interesting ideas. SpaceX, his Tesla motors.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
His
a guy with a lot of swag.
His huge building that is a battery. Am I wrong?
I don't know. You tell me. Tell me what you think of Mr. Elon Musk.
I don't know, I guess, a lot about him. I understand that the entrepreneur side, he's kind of a badass, He's put this technology in use that that we probably should have had already. He's made it better. I mean, every 6 months, his technology is just getting better and better. His cars are awesome. I don't know about the huge 20-inch iPad for the console, but I don't know. Again, and all his technology, I think it's it's definitely going to help us.
Well, if I recall correctly, in episode 1, we kind of touched on Tesla providing these super progressive smart vehicles that run off of electricity, hence the name Tesla Motors.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this guy, he seems to be putting his eggs into multiple baskets.
What is that?
He's trying to be the, what's that?
Diversifying.
Exactly. Diversifying his portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to dominate the independent space exploration, which is genius. I mean, I'm sure how old is he? Can you bring that up real quick? Is that available to you?
I can figure that out with the Google machine.
I mean, how old is this guy? Because it seems in the last 10 years, he came out of nowhere.
What's your guess?
I'm going to guess he's 39.
Damn, I'll be pissed off if he's only 8 years older than me. Excuse me. He is 44.
Wow. So, in that ballpark.
Born in South Africa.
South Africa, predominantly white. That's interesting.
Elon Reeve Musk.
Who's that director of Chappie and District 9? That guy came out of South Africa as well.
Yeah,
a lot of interesting characters come out of South Africa.
Chappie blew me away. I went into it just thinking it was going to be some mindless movie, but it gets so deep. And then I watched the Johnny Depp movie right after that, Transcendent, and it wasn't even near as good as that. Of course, that movie sucked, but it made that movie suck even more after after seeing Chappie before it.
Well, basically, a lot of interesting people come out of South Africa, and Elon Musk thinks that he says that there's a 1 in billion chance our reality is not a simulation. So he's really pushing this idea. And to me, because mind you, throughout history, a lot of great thinkers have entertained this concept. Like Socrates, for instance, thought that the perception of reality was being dominated by a quote unquote evil entity.
Mm-hmm.
And this evil entity was messing with the individual, and it like would infiltrate the collective. So like a lot of interesting thinkers throughout history have had these just really wacky explanations to what's going on in the world. But then eventually Socrates came to the conclusion that he was like, the I am, and therefore, we all are, and that is it. He's a free thinking individual. But the whole idea of a program.
Now you're going to get Socrates in trouble.
Yeah. Well, Socrates.
Okay. All right.
The whole idea that a program is running our reality is like an old concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Matrix is the updated version of that old theory. And it goes deeper, like in theological sects, the SECT, not SEX.
Yeah.
The Gnostic followers, like of Gnosticism, they believe that the demiurge is the wicked ruler of reality, and that the world is inherently evil, and man has free will to conquer the evil demiurge.
Right.
So the individual should spend his whole life trying to transform the inherently backward and evil and chaotic demiurge. And then it goes deeper, like, that like the Jewish Kabbalah and Jewish religions, or Orthodox Jews, they don't believe in this Christian savior. They don't believe that Jesus Christ came here, and they think that they're the original creator of the world, or the computer writer, or the coder,
creator,
the programmer,
the creator.
Yeah, he is
Architect.
Yes, the grand architect. Like the Masons like to call him the grand architect, the great builder.
Was also in Matrix.
Well, yeah, they love to draw from all these philosophical discussions,
right?
But yeah, that's the split. Like, people come to this conclusion that the reality they're living in is a program reality, and somehow they apply evil attributes to the natural organic reality that they live in, and they want to transcend it, and they want to master it, they want to dominate it. And that's just like in the nature of man, they want to master their surroundings. So for me, when Elon Musk comes out, and I love his like all of his inventions and companies and investments,
they're forward thinking.
Yeah, they're great. Progressive. We need it.
Yep.
Sure. But when he comes out, it makes me worry about him, because does he really believe that this whole, and what does that mean to him? If this whole world is a simulation and we're a Sims game, is he going to live his life out? Is he going to implement things that act upon this belief that we're nothing but robotic simulations?
It doesn't.
That's a dangerous thought to me.
It could mean something completely opposite or completely different than that too. If some people may see it as the Sims video game being a video game from a processor and a computer, but what he could be saying is like, there's all these different dimensions, and if all these different dimensions are always working just a little bit, I don't know, I guess we'll say differently, but the same way all the time, wouldn't that kind of be a simulation of a different dimension every time?
But is he trying to suggest that we do not have free will?
I don't believe this. I believe maybe what he would be saying is the concepts are all, or what, how everything works is definitely a program, because it all works a certain way every time, all the time.
But is it a predetermined simulation, or is
No,
it a live ongoing program?
I think it's a program rewriting itself,
Okay.
because it has to, just like evolution. We rewrite our DNA.
Okay.
But again, we don't really know exactly what he thinks. But I believe if you're thinking the way he's thinking, that's my view.
And you know, journalists are going to spin it. They're going to try to make like Elon Musk sound like
Well, one way or another, right?
this crazy scientist, the mad scientist with mad theories.
Right. Jekyll and Hyde.
But at the end of the day, you're right. We really don't know what he means by, like, I bet I would have to sit down with him for a good 6 hours to understand what he means by that.
Well, at least 2 hours. First, you have to go out for a couple of beers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm sure he has a fine selection of drink.
We just go drink some nice wine at his place.
In South Africa.
Or wherever else.
Get some blood diamonds in the process. But no.
Whoa.
When people, this is my worry. Like, this is my fear. People who are very intelligent want to enforce these ideas, these ideologies, these ways of thinking and living upon the people who don't want to decide for themselves what the world is. Is it dangerous if in the future we construct a simulated reality with all of our algorithms and our machines and our computers, and we tell people that that reality is the real reality, and we neglect to remind them that we made that? It's an artificial construct that humans created. The real nature of reality is not that. But then you have people like Elon Musk going out and saying, well, the world is a simulation, so just accept that you are just a machine and lie down and roll over. This is my worry. People who are scientific, technical experts or elites, social elites, they're going to make everybody believe that they're these biological robots that do not have free will, so they will lay down and accept their place in life.
Yeah. No, I don't know. That's not how it is. We all know that. Or I know that.
So you don't think that's a possibility, that somebody would try to push a false doctrine on you to try to control you? Just like a church giving you...
It definitely could happen. I mean, I understand where it could happen, or where this stems from, but I don't...
Well, it's like the idea of the Pope telling you that he's going to save you from your sins and you shouldn't sin. Meanwhile, he's committing the hideous acts in private because he doesn't believe in the blueprints he's giving you.
Right. Well,
so you don't think that could ever occur with these social elitists? And I'm not saying Elon Musk is a social elitist, but what if someone who is a social elitist tells people, you better believe this because I'm Elon Musk and I'm really smart?
It's just like a Ponzi scheme, or like it's always about taking advantage of somebody not as smart as you.
Control.
Yeah. But in this case, I think somewhere it may have even been taken out of context, the way that this writer
absolutely
put the info out there. So I don't know.
And remember, this was devolved into an opinion piece for the author to jabber about his own philosophies like I'm doing right now.
Right.
So what he did, I'm doing. So yeah, it's just something to think about. And at the end of the day, it's my thoughts on his thoughts. And like I said, we don't really know what he meant by that. Moving on, what do you think about synthetic genomes?
Wow, I mean, I figured back in ninth and 10th grade, we already had this shit down. You know what I mean? Like, we just couldn't use it yet.
All right. No, I mean, you're close. Here's a paragraph. Scientists first made a synthetic gene in the lab in 1970. It was a gene for yeast. We were talking about yeast and fundamental, like,
Yep.
the building blocks of food and whatnot.
Right, right.
They have since progressed to making genomes for viruses and bacteria. And we know that biological weapons have been used and tested and continue to be researched.
True.
But manufacturing a synthetic human genome would be far more complex and a daunting task.
We both know the double helix doesn't occur very much in the universe, supposedly.
And the person who discovered the double helix, is it true he had that finding while under the influence of LSD?
LSD, yeah. Supposedly, what was his name? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Hopefully the listeners are yelling at us right now. They're like, it's this name.
I think it started with an F, but I can't remember.
That always blows my mind away, though.
No. Who discovered? C-O-V-E-R-T-E? Oh,
well, as the article goes on, it says, it took years of effort for scientists to complete the first rough draft of a map of the human genome in 2000. Crick. We all know about the Human Genome Project. What's that?
Watson. Well, supposedly it was two people, Watson and Crick, but I believe it was Crick that actually.
Watson and Crick.
Yeah, two.
Now, were they American scientists or from Europe?
Well, let's find out. Oh, this is some fucking talk of people talking about.
While you're figuring that out, I'll finish this.
Yep.
So we know the Human Genome Project was completed. In recent years, researchers have used that information to develop ways to create or write small synthetic pieces of human genetic code by combining the chemical building blocks of DNA. So like you're saying, they're building small pieces of the double helix.
Which they have to. I mean, you can't just...
And this is a straight quote from a professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School. And I'm guessing his name is George Church. And I'm guessing he's one of the scientists who participated in this behind closed doors discussion. Okay. And this is a direct quote. We have the ability to synthesize bacterial genomes, and we can synthesize parts of human genomes. We would like to be able to scale that up so we can make larger and larger collections of genomes. And see, what this boils down to is they would love to have replaceable parts for the human, our anatomy. They want replaceable parts for our body. And they would also like to repair things in our genome.
Right. It's kind of like stem cells, but it's the next level. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's much more direct and hands-on.
Absolutely. I mean, don't you think this is just kind of the evolution of medicine, where it needs to go instead of all this, we're going to treat you rather than cure you?
Absolutely. But to me, we have all these scientific achievements, but yet we're socially backwards, if you follow that. We haven't made the same breakthroughs like we have in electronics, nanotechnology, biology, astrophysics. We haven't made the same breakthroughs in our social sciences, in our social world. Our daily interactions are still very, very, very backwards. You know what I mean? The majority of the populace, they're not ready to handle. This is technical experts talking their jargon, and hopefully it trickles down to us. But at the end of the day, will we end up with like something like Elysium?
Yeah. Do you know what Elysium means?
You know, I
I
I'm
learned this.
ashamed. I'm ashamed of this. I should know it because I know it's either a Greek translation, right?
I want to say it was. I want to say it was
You know what? I'm gonna actually look.
Latin, but I learned this on the spelling bee that was just it was last Thursday night, and one of the words that the person had to spell was Elysium. So tell me what Elysium is.
It's ancient Greek
It is Greek, yeah.
and
My bad.
is a conception of the afterlife. So basically, Elysium means heaven. Elysium is a heaven.
Right. But what else?
So what else does it mean?
Yep.
It's kind of bathed in a lot of classical mythology, and I'd have to do some more reading here.
Well, what's like the everyday? What can it mean?
Well, it's just a place of perfect happiness. Like a modern day translation from Oxford is it is a place of perfect happiness.
Oh, I must have heard it wrong. I thought because didn't he like
Because that's how I understood it. When I watched Elysium, I thought, wow, this is... And by the way, we're kind of making another circle, a full circle. Elysium was directed by the District 9 guy, right? Out of South Africa, right?
Director Neil Blomkamp.
Yep. That is the same guy coming out of South Africa. So anyways, that's my fear again. I keep putting in my little fears here. But to me, it's a real threat. I mean, if you break away and you have these technological developments that are not going to trickle down, and if they do trickle down, they're going to trickle down for a price. You got to be quite wealthy to afford to live in Elysium, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
When they start editing genomes and creating replaceable parts for our bodies, is that the equivalent to the fantasy in Elysium? The I don't know what they called it in that movie, but where you go into this MRI scanner and it repairs your DNA.
When that shit crazy, because you know that can happen soon.
Well, that's my problem with like our advances in quantum physics, nanotechnology, and now synthetic modifications for our genome. That to me is pointing directly to Elysium.
Yeah, I mean, again, just like half the science fiction movies we've already dreamt up in the 70s and 60s and 80s, and we've came up with all that shit. In Star Trek, they didn't even see a video phone. They didn't even get that part. It was just a walkie-talkie on Star Trek.
Exactly. The precursor, the noospheric realm. Noosphere is just the realm of the mind. Everything in the mind can eventually be manifested, externalized.
Isn't it crazy? Like lasers.
But it all makes sense, you know? Like, that's just how we invent things.
Yeah, that's how again, it's forward thinking and dreams, man, following that shit.
Yes. And we're capitalizing on some of the things we discussed in our very first episode. But that's just it, Mr. Ritter. Do you have any amount of fear that certain technologies and certain capabilities or abilities will be hoarded and stored away for the rich and the gifted?
I don't know. I think it's always as technology is.
Well, let me put it this way. If you tomorrow needed a new liver, could you afford to harvest one from the black market?
30 G's? No.
So there you are. That's social Darwinism, is it not?
I guess, yeah. But at the same time, why do I really need that liver? Am I supposed to live, right? Am I supposed to keep going? Is it written that I'm supposed to die?
Okay, but that's just defeating the argument.
I'm just saying. Well, no, I'm just bringing back to what we were talking about earlier. No, but for me, I would do it somehow. I would get it done. You know what I mean?
It would be like that. What's that movie with Jason Statham where he has to keep shocking himself to stay alive?
That was pretty cool.
You'll get it done, man. No, I believe you would. And I probably would lock myself away. I'll be like, Ritter's after a liver. I gotta stay in my room.
I would network my way to get a liver, or I would, I don't think I'd have to steal it or anything like that. I don't think I'd have to like drug somebody and cut it out and like they wake up in a pool of ice water.
Well, and if this technology is real one day, you won't have to be crude about it. You will just go to your medical care professional and you'll be put on a waiting list and you'll get that liver just like we do today, except for it will be a specialized product for you.
Put it this way, bro. When they can start printing DNA out of a 3D printer, how fast do you think that genetic tissue can be printed and put back into your body?
But why would they do that for 7+ billion people? Like, okay, if your argument, and I'm not saying you're for or against this argument, I kind of feel like you want to be the other side of what I'm getting at.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
People today, man, we were talking about genetically modified organisms, a necessary evil to feed people.
Right.
Okay, sure, we have that.
Or for Americans,
but people starve every day, Mr. Ritter.
That's
people
true.
People are neglected in the like. Do you expect this technology to be available to everyone?
I think, especially living where we live, America, I think if you can get it, you can get it. If you live in Africa, I don't know. I mean, wouldn't this be one of the first things brought over there by people that actually do care?
Yeah, I mean, UN globalization wants to provide, so they say, their agenda is to unify the world and give these third world nations access to modern medical care and food.
Also, what happens when everybody's not sick, when nobody's sick?
That's just it.
I think we were talking about it at work, or somebody was saying something. What if there was no viruses? What if there was no sickness? What would have happened?
Economies run on death. That sounds just very drab and depressing, yes, but death is the motivation. It's the motivator of all life. Death moves all life because if we defeat death and we do get an Elysium, I just have this. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. I just don't, because just the way social structures work and the way people relate to other people. I mean, today when you have more money than someone, you go and you're served by the lower class. Right. Not a caste, because class you have mobility. You can move through a class. A caste, you're set unless you marry.
What you're saying is it's not going to be Wally. It will be Elysium.
It will be Elysium. Absolutely.
Well, I think if we're going to go there, it's the social construct. It's where you are
it's the human nature.
Yeah.
But don't you think technical experts should be able to, and this is going back to what I said, we're too advanced in our material sciences, and we're socially and metaphysically backwards. Like we don't care about one another enough to really put to use our sciences. And what do you think CERN is all about, man? They want to program, they want to find the basic building block of life. You know why? Because they want to build something from nothing.
Absolutely.
And nobody talks about this.
They may have already found it.
That's my biggest problem with CERN. It's not a conspiracy to form a black hole, and it's not a conspiracy to talk to interdimensional entities.
You know what's crazy is they're making little fucking black holes in a little room.
All day, every day, man.
But they're making them. They're looking, they're controlling.
The material sciences are way ahead of
it's crazy.
our social sciences. That's what's going on.
Well, it's because it's that greed part. It's that we want to know everything as fast as we can, and we finally figured out a way to know everything.
Well, actually, in the deep mechanics of it all,
It's hard.
it's all based on competition.
Yeah, of course. It's who's got a bigger dick.
Like evolution, and you're right. Evolution to capitalism to what we have today, like crony international. I don't even know if you can define today's global market. It's outside of the boundaries of known political definitions. But anyways, human nature and the way we organize ourselves is based on competition on every level.
Oh yeah.
And the way we advance, like, for instance, the Cold War. I'm not saying I believe that wealthy people funded both sides, but it would make sense to do that. You would need to prop up opposition to create competition, to drive motivation, to drive innovation. And look at the arms race and the scientific achievements during the Cold War.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? You have to have this. You have to manipulate the human nature to get what you want through competition, because that's how we work. That's how
we've always been.
So when we do achieve this, we can program the fundamental principles, the building blocks.
But you also have to you also have to put in the word ego in there too.
Okay.
It's all.
Where would you like me to place it?
It's ego driven.
Okay.
Competition.
But see, at certain levels, like someone like Elon Musk, who mingles with some movers and shakers, really intelligent folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they get their printable, programmable matter machine, if you will they project a worldview on everybody else to build the matrix for us? I'm going back to when Elon Musk said the world's a simulation. Are they going to live like gods and tell us that we are robots to be harvested? Are they going to push that on us? And will they live outside the blueprint? That's what I'm getting at.
Well, you're basically just bringing things back to slavery.
Yeah. Are we going back into a form of slavery, except for it's a scientific dictatorship?
I think the people we're all strong enough right now to and get stronger. I mean, if that shit happens, I guess you say that we wouldn't even know it, right?
That's the best type of prison.
But I feel like you have to go down some
can't see the bars.
Pretty different roads to be able to not see that shit happen.
Well, and to counter your point there, I hear people who go, if the government ever turned into like a Nazi regime, that's why we have the Second Amendment. And I look at them and I kind of laugh and I go, you realize they have drones, right? You realize that your gunpowder formed by the Chinese isn't going to compare to laser guided missiles from a robot, right? So this is my point. Even if people find out that they're living in a matrix designed for them,
Terminator?
Well, it's just, I just disagree with you fundamentally. I think that the majority of people would not be able to defend themselves against a takeover of everything.
No, you're absolutely right. Well, I guess, again, there has to be a leader of the people. There has to be somebody to, I mean, it has to be, it can't, nobody's going to stand up for themselves by themselves. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'll get these people that it'll switch right back to caveman and like protect my cave. And if you come close to it, it's
the hierarchy.
Yeah, it's yeah.
But yeah, in this last article, kind of mixes in with the other topics we're covering. Can machines make music? Google is trying. What do you think about computers or machines learning things that humans already discovered or invented? Because here's the argument. One side says machines are going to obtain consciousness and they will be just like us. The other side says machines can never be us because they only mimic us.
I think
Where do you stand?
I believe that so what you said at first was
Machines will obtain consciousness and be just like us.
well,
versus machines just mimicking us through biomimicry or machine learning.
Quote unquote learning. Yeah. But I feel like we already do make music with machines, and all these machines have to do is figure out kind of the basic bitch of that music. So, okay, yeah, that could probably happen. But when it gets to the fact that if you teach a computer to learn more and learn faster, do you think that machine would learn faster and start inventing things before we could? Do you think it would like exponentially?
Absolutely, because that's what quantum computers. Okay,
absolutely.
Let me read this paragraph to put the context.
Yep.
For this article. Okay, machine learning has already been used extensively to understand content, as in speech recognition or translation. With this new program, we want to explore the other side, developing algorithms that can learn how to generate art and music, potentially creating compelling and artistic content on their own. And here's where the divide, the line is drawn and crossed.
You still have to tell the computer to do that, though.
Exactly. You're programming a machine to learn something from something else. Is it doing it consciously? That's what I'm trying to get at. Because this is what a quantum computer does, Nick. Everything we type in and give into Google is a reflection of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
What the quantum computer does is it learns things from us. So it's a hive mind of everything we are, but it actually isn't an original conscious entity.
No,
it's a
we can manipulate the shit out of it if we want to.
Well, it's miming us. It's a mime.
Right.
It's just imitating all of our conscious decisions
right now.
And the computer program. Yes, right now. It hasn't achieved sentience, or they're not telling us it's achieved sentience.
I don't think it has.
But this is how it works. Imagine you're on YouTube and you stumble across a YouTube comment and you reply to it. Well, this quantum computer and some of the algorithms they're developing can reply to you and learn from you. But you think it's a human because you're working in their circles. Yeah. So when you sign up for YouTube or Google, you say, yes, you can do everything. You can have your way with my data. So you go onto YouTube and you think you're talking to a human, but you're actually talking to a machine that's learning through you. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
We are all contributing unknowingly to building artificial intelligence for these companies.
Well, absolutely. And what is it? Metadata?
Well, yeah, and that has something to do with it, but metadata is more for trading.
Well, I know I'm saying this is where it started. This is
exactly. Getting the
collection of information.
Correct. In fact, say it again.
Collection of information
is crucial, and that is why they want everybody to get into these centralized systems, right? Everybody's on, like, if you go to Alexa, you know what Alexa is?
No.
I might be saying it wrong, but I believe it's Alexa.com. It's an internet traffic rating site. So it records globally according to, and you can get into the analytics of each country and demographic. Well, the top 3 websites for almost every country: YouTube, Google, Facebook. So they want everybody in the world to be contributing to these centralized systems. And if you have a algorithm or a computer that's trying to learn as much as it can, you would want as many people as you can get to contribute to this machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
These are things I think about. And it blows my mind that nobody actually understands this aspect of our interactions.
A lot of people are trying to.
Well, it's in the press every day, and it's your future. Like, these machines are going to run your traffic systems. These machines are going to automate your... What do you think an automated vehicle is? That's an artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
So
people don't want to think of it that way.
But why not? Because it's the future. It's progressive.
Absolutely.
They should love progressive thoughts.
Technology, because they want to be able to... Now they can hit that button on their Tesla. Thank you, Elon Musk. And they can check their stats for their fantasy football team. Now, I can't believe he only got 22 yards today, 4 carries. I can't believe it. My fantasy team's going to lose this week. I'm never going to be able to get those points back. You know?
Exactly.
Most of the time, that's what it is. So nobody wants to pay attention to anything other than what their life has, and what their little, I don't know, how do I say it? What their little brain muster,
their disposition, what their disposition encompasses.
Yeah, and they don't want to get out of their way of thinking. They're comfortable. They're
creatures of habit.
They're content. Yes, creatures of habit.
And see, I think if Elysium is ever realized, it's going to be through terraforming another planet, and they're going to export the technical experts, and they're going to wirelessly, through the Internet of Things, control the bureaucracy from a different planet.
Right. But they're starting that technology that you're talking about.
Exactly.
With getting CO2 and stuff like that onto Mars.
And what happens when... Did we discuss in the last broadcast? I think we just completely neglected to discuss that the EU teamed up with Facebook, Google, Microsoft to quell radical speech, or what they deem by community guidelines radical speech. Do you think in the future, when everything's connected to the Internet of Things and you're driving your you're not driving your you're riding in your automated vehicle,
yeah,
and you're busy browsing your neural interface.
Okay.
This is the end of the century, like maybe mid-century, the way processors are doubling in power every year almost. Will they be able to, for instance, if you disagree with something that they believe in, will they be able to hack your vehicle and just terminate you?
Is this why they put the dislike button on Facebook?
Yes, you get too many dislikes on your Facebook and your vehicle one day crashes and there's no lawyers because it was an accident.
While you're taking a nap on the highway, your Tesla just shuts down and you just go into oncoming traffic.
And you know what's funny, Mr. Ritter? What? These topics are being discussed everywhere, but nobody's actually telling you they're being discussed.
Right. Well, it takes a pretty big mind to question these type of things every day.
Well, all I'm saying is the 3 articles that we covered, what kind of images do they paint for you?
They all kind of intertwine, and they all...
Because I totally want to be with you and be like, hell yeah, go humanity. But then I look at our history and how we developed an atomic bomb in secret and then tested it. We just tested it. twice, dropped that shit on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. I mean, you could argue they didn't want to, because Germany was divided, if you recall, the Berlin Wall. They didn't want to split Japan with Russia, so they ended the whole war before Russia could help us in the invasion like they did in Germany. But that's beyond the point. They wanted to test their new toy.
But this has to do going back to the ego and the showing who has the bigger dick. Because
the atomic bomb is quite a large dick.
Yeah, well, they
it
said
obliterates.
Okay, so there's some stories that say that Japan was already gonna surrender, and we dropped him anyway. But then there's other stories saying that if we wouldn't have dropped the bombs, they wouldn't have surrendered. They'd keep coming. But I don't, nobody really knows. I can,
exactly.
I can make my own assumptions.
It takes a wise mind to come to these terms, but you've had a lot of life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
When you are participating in something that becomes a historical reference piece, bringing up something immediately that comes to mind. Obama. Remember the grill master at your work? Yeah. And I'm going to loosely, because I don't know the legal obligations to this story. Are we confined in any? Do you know? Can I talk freely about this?
Technically, I'm not supposed to talk to the press, but...
Are we press?
You're not the press.
Okay, so...
We just won't say his name.
Within our work environment, we had a disgruntled employee. But not really. We can't really say he's disgruntled.
The first person that went stealing from people and the restaurant and has framed other people. Anyway.
Well, this guy decided to rob a bank. And I'm not going to get into the small nitty-gritty details because I'm just trying to make a point here. You were a part of this process, not in part of I'm trying to frame you. No, you realized the truth behind the whole situation before the press wrote an article. Did you not?
Right.
So this is my point. Humans tend to forget, and it takes a wise mind to really find this out. And later on in life, people come to terms with this. Things that we record in history are just like articles published in the paper for posterity.
Mm-hmm.
The real story is always more complex than the simple analogies and the simple sentences we form to describe something we had no idea. I mean, the journalist who covered the bank robbery didn't know this employee, didn't know what led up to this. And I'm not saying you did either. What I'm trying to get at is the journalist tried to define it for everybody, and the people who read the article came away with a perspective that was not entirely true. And that's how history works.
That's true. Very much so.
So when we talk about Japan wanting to surrender or not, that's just a journalist trying to describe to you what may have happened.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
So but again, I always like to take that into account.
This is exactly what I was going to say. What you're about to say, I'm sure. But you have to take the information you're given and you make your own assumptions, right? Exactly.
But people aren't willing to do that. So they come away with...
They get drawn into that personality or that idealistic persona. We talked about this too. Did we?
Yes. And the best part about these podcasts is we're slowly connecting the things we've talked about.
Right.
And we're building this beautiful, beautiful portrait for our audience. And hopefully they're enjoying the radio we're producing. Because I'm enjoying it.
It's not a bad place to be.
No. Auditory Osmosis, folks.
True.
But yeah, that's just it. with things like Hiroshima, Nagasaki, do we really know the complex political environment? Were you there? Were you a participant? Because
No, and most
the
people
frame of reference is always either an exaggeration, hyperbole, or a simplification of the real occurrence.
correct. That's a true statement also. But this is why people should form their own opinions and stand up for their selves and their side. Whether people think it's fringy or not, you know.
Right. So, going off of us building a bomb in secret to end World War II,
Right.
what are we building in secret now, and what will it end? Nick Ritter.
What are we building, or what are we?
What do you think? What do you think is in the future for humanity? I mean, who knew? Who knew that we were building these atomic colliding bombs that were going to energize elements to the point of a nuclear reaction in the, what do they call it? Nuclear fission?
Yeah, fission.
Yes. Was anybody expecting that? Because I'd like to take us out of time and place right now. Let's pretend auditory osmosis was way back in the 1920s, while all the physics were being worked out. That's what I see going on.
I can hear you speaking now. I'm in the 20s. It's roaring here.
It's the roaring 20s, and we have jazz, and the market's booming, and it looks like Germany is making up for their inflation period, and Hitler seems to be a great leader.
I just got my new Model T Ford.
Tell me more about your Model T Ford, Mr. Ritter. Why we have Boston accents, I don't know.
Because it sounds really good from the roaring 20s.
But that's just it. Pretend that we are there.
Yep.
Are we discussing? Okay, let's say I was airing this podcast in the 1920s, and I was talking to you about nuclear fission. Would you ever think that we would have such a thing during the 1920s? And remind you, I was just talking about the precursors, like we are today with CERN and all these new technologies.
Right. Okay. So I don't think it has to be the 20s or anything. Okay.
But did you think that they would drop a bomb?
In this case, it could be anywhere. But even when I was a kid, I wondered why, when people say there's no oxygen in space, how does the sun keep burning?
Very good question.
And this is I was asking this question at 6 years old to teachers, and they didn't understand. They couldn't answer the question.
You were a bright young lad.
I still don't know if I'm very bright, but
you're being too hard on yourself. You're a bright young lad. You're a strapping chap.
Again, it was questioning things. It was wondering how that shit was working. Not just holy shit, that flaming ball in the sky, but why is that flaming ball in the sky is there? How is it there? How is it flaming? Like, you know, but it helps with everyday thinking, with trying to think of different ways of seeing everything you look at.
You know what? Let's talk about the sun. The sun's amazing.
Right.
The corona, the corona around the sun is hotter than the actual like inside of the sun.
Right.
Little info for people. But I'm with you, man. What is the energy source for the sun for its nuclear combustion?
Okay, so it's actually called nucleation, and it works on the same level that when you throw a Mentos into a Diet Coke. Okay.
Fizzy.
But when that fizzing happens on the sun, it's at this perfect. What it's doing is on the outside.
Ratio.
On the outside, it's pushing in, trying to hold everything together, but on the inside, it's pushing out so hard that it's it's basically it's a back and forth thing, right?
Yes.
But this is what makes it hotter on the outside than on the inside, is because it's releasing all this what's the word, friction, basically. But what
Right.
the nucleation or the nuclear fission that's happening is everything being, you know, just excited molecules, man.
Right. I mean, the realm of, to me, okay, this is where I think we fundamentally have different perspectives of reality.
Okay.
I totally understand, respect, and follow the third dimension realm of mechanical, linear, chronological time and space.
Mhm.
So what I mean by that is, like, when people come up to me and they talk about evolution and Darwin, and they talk about the way energy molecules work, and the way particles work, and the way everything that we can observe with our senses, all that stuff, the
Right.
way science explains it, I agree. I accept it. That's fine. That's progress. But this is where I'm a little different than most people. I keep that tucked away in a category. Okay. So what I mean by that is most people accept that as reality in general, right?
Right.
It's this giant macroscopic explanation for the world.
Mm-hmm.
What I do as what I would like to think is a process of an intelligent thinker, I like to categorize that under the temporal, empirical, material realm of reality. I literally categorize. I throw that into a box, and it's not to encase it and make it for a closed-minded perception. What I'm saying is, I have this intuitive feeling that at a multi-dimensional level, the things that we're explaining now, a century or two from now, are going to be a dimensional perspective. And what I mean by that, you're going to you know how we have terrestrial physics and we have astrophysics?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to a century or two from now. And I hope, you know what I love about the internet, Mr. Ritter? I hope one day, a century or two from now, somebody listens to this and goes, holy shit. Yeah, totally.
Right. Well, I 100% understand where you're coming from. So
And
basically,
where I'm going with it. But go on, and then I'll capitalize on that.
basically what you're saying is, in a different dimension, all this either could have already happened, but what you're saying is it could be happening again, or it hasn't happened yet.
Not even in like a chronological
Exactly, but
time.
yeah, I mean that's hard.
What's the word?
That's hard to separate yourself
fracture.
from. But yes, it's
not a fracture to me.
It's because they have no idea that a different dimension's happening either, right?
I think what we're doing in the realm of what we can see in the hard sciences, we're describing the epidermis level. And once we master the epidermis level, we may use this as a blueprint to control people who don't want to look deeper. And we're going to get technical experts to study different levels. But the material realm of existence, to me, is an epidermis, like a skin layer. Like, you know how you can see the skin? Well, what's going on underneath that? What causes the epidermis to act the way it does? So going back to what I was saying, a century or two from now, I believe students are going to be studying the third dimension. They're going to have a degree in the third dimension, and then there's going to be a fourth dimension student. And what I mean by that is they're going to accept that at a quantum level, there is causation, there is process. There is action and effect
And
at a
reason.
deeper and a reason at a deeper level than what we understand.
Mhm.
And that translates to what we can see, but that is only a field of discipline. So like you have terrestrial mechanics and physics, and like you have astrophysics, people are going to a century from now, or maybe 2 centuries from now, are going to understand completely that the 5 sense reality of the third dimension is the epidermis level of reality. And we will have students exploring the other dimensions that cause the reactions that we see. Do you
Mhm.
follow that?
I do.
What do you think about that?
Hang on 2 seconds. Let me medicate.
Because that's my main problem. Like when I talk to kids and adults, when they confront me and they just want to jabber at me about how they know so much about this, what you see here and now and what you feel. But then I think to myself, you're really not a free thinker if you really accept all that as truth, because what is the cause of that? I go deeper. I always dig
Okay, so
underneath it.
a lot of people only get to that point, all right? To that point of where they can question it, but at the same time they know they can't answer it, or
But
they
are they
know
not reactive puppets in that regard?
maybe not. Maybe they're just lazy. But it,
Maybe they're just
they're-
lazy,
it's
bro.
true. Maybe they are. Maybe they couldn't find it in their Google search, so they stopped looking. You know what I mean? But I feel like if you want, once you have already started to challenge ways of thinking, or just you can look at one thing and like I said with the sun, and ask yourself that many questions while still being on what is happening, I think you can definitely start to think a different way, and being, you know, start to question a lot more about, like, trying to get deeper like you. But again, like I said, people get to a certain point and they just stop thinking about it, and they don't
Well,
want to keep trying.
and I don't think it's fear necessarily. It's just it's easier to stop
It's exactly right. It's easier
thinking
to just
about that.
quit. It's easier to stop. It's easier to, well, like how many people use their brain to think, and then like their head gets, they start to get a headache, and then they're like, oh, I'm done thinking right now.
Well, you know what I relate it to, if people didn't understand that last metaphor I was trying to use to describe the way I think of reality.
Mhm.
I like to draw a parallel to the medical profession. Doctors love to describe your symptoms. You know what I mean? They love to tell you what your symptoms are and how they can medicate,
Categorize it.
or yes, and give you a remedy to your symptom, but they never want you to know the cause of the symptom. See, I see the temporal material world as a symptom. Is that easier to like picture?
Keep
I
going.
see it as I see it as a symptom. Everything we are experiencing is a symptom of something else. And we're not there yet as a species to describe the real causation, the real chain
Right.
of reaction, the cause and effect. But the epidermis level is the symptom level. And when you go to the doctor, they ask you, what are your symptoms? To me, most of the free thinkers or scientists are deeply involved in the symptoms, and they neglect to address the cause.
Yeah.
Because if you solve the symptoms, you can provide solutions, and you can appear to be
Well, the key is they're using these symptoms to try to find the cause, but all they do is keep finding symptoms.
right. And to further this analogy, to give you a third way of looking at it, it's like when you take a flashlight And any surface, if you shine that light onto the surface, there's one way of looking at it. Light on, right? So, okay, just light on. The light hits the surface and you see the surface, right? It illuminates the surface.
But all you see is what's being lit.
What is the surface, right? You only see the surface.
Mhm.
So a different way is light through. So it's light on. Light on is the symptoms. Light on is the way we medicate and we provide solutions to symptoms.
Mhm.
But light through is the X-ray. You don't just illuminate the surface. You pierce the skin and you see the bones.
Yeah.
That is my last, like, I can't explain it in any more detail than that.
Well, there's again, there's many people.
It's hard to relate that to people.
Many people have different ways of thinking, and many people see things way different than we do. And a lot of people don't trust the different ways that they see things either. You know, like I'm very good with people. Like I can understand, like I can see from across the room if you're, you know, mad or happy, or and I know how to combat that. I know how to make it better regardless, or you know, but I don't know, I'm good at that, but I can never I can never confirm it right away. I don't trust myself, and that think that's another way of people they can't see.
They don't trust their own intuition.
Exactly.
And two things. One, I feel as if the top tier scientists are making that leap. They're doing the X-ray vision instead of the light on, and they're addressing the cause instead of the symptoms, but they don't want people to be involved in it because they're technical experts. And second, how do you react if you are able to intuitively see how people feel and think, and not think, but I know what you mean. Like you see someone, you can see their emotional expression and you want to address it, and you can address it usually successfully, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's almost like an aura. It's like a color they give off when I see people, like, not necessarily for the first time or whatever, but because I see the same person walking around throughout the kitchen every day. You know what I mean? Like whether it's you or some other person that works with us. But I can see the way that, I don't know, just from, you know, across the room, I can see what mood that person's in. I don't know. Again, it's an aura, it's a color they give off or something, but I can just
energy.
Yeah, it's somehow I can see it.
Well, I like to practice. How do you respond to someone who practices enigmatic probability? And what I mean by that is, how do you respond to
Joker?
Not necessarily the Joker. I'm saying that, how do you respond to someone who has mastered their emotional responses and they can filter their emotional responses?
You invoke a response that you know you can get.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to your reading and your intuitive feelings, how do you react to someone who is aware of those things and they can filter your readings?
Well, depending on if it's let's see, are you saying a certain person, or are you?
No. I'm saying hypothetically. Okay, for instance, people who work for like the Central Intelligence Agencies, they craft personas and they filter emotions to appear to be something that they're not.
I do what I do. I do what I do best. I play stupid.
So you place your reaction to someone who's crafting or manipulating a natural intuitive feeling is to not read it. You just play stupid.
Well, I feel like when I do read it, well, okay, so.
And can you tell?
I can tell sometimes. I guess I'm not super gullible, but I think I can see when somebody's trying to get something out or trying to do, you know what I mean, like we'll say get information out in this topic. I think playing stupid's the best way to do it, because the questions you can ask when you're dumb aren't the same questions that you ask when they know you're smart, or they know.
And if you're stupid, you're not a threat, most likely.
Right. So you have to put your foot in the door rather than trying to barge your way in.
Makes sense.
You know, incremental, yeah.
Process.
Yep. You take it with a grain of salt.
I mean, I would like to hear more about this intuitive, because, I mean, I have some of that, but the majority of my mind, like my time and the way my mind works, is I'm involved with the macroscopic.
You're also very, and you think inside a lot too, though. You're creative in that way, though. You're a writer. You know, you make these stories.
I inhabit personalities that I've never experienced.
Alcohol? No, I'm just kidding. No, remember, that's the personality you were a few years back. You were definitely, well, what was your favorite writer at the time? Am I right?
Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, this is good therapy for Ether Hawkins. Yeah, you're 100% correct there. I inhabit, in some ways, I'm a character actor. Except for I'm not a disciplined character actor, because I'm involved with like the philosophical concepts behind it. I'm not involved in being the best character actor I can be.
Yeah.
Where like someone like DiCaprio or Jared Leto or Johnny Depp, they will stay in character for days, months, to perfect a character. And if you stumbled across those guys, you would think these guys are whack jobs. No, they're just very intelligent humans that want to give you a crafted persona to entertain you. And I see that in radio, but when it applies to myself, I like to see the philosophical concept, and I'm not too worried about staying in character. My in-character gestures tend to be just humorous little distractions for my friends, family, and just counterparts.
Right. If you're saying character actors, I have to throw out the best character actor on the
Hey man, hit me.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh, how did I neglect to? Yeah. And you know what? You know who's up with him? Robert Duvall.
Duvall's good. Yeah, as a character actor.
Oh boy, Duvall and Daniel Day-Lewis should do their own.
You know that Jim Carrey used to be that way too, but he like cured himself of it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine living with him as the Mask?
Oh God. Split personality disorder. And that's just it. Like you can differentiate between a mental illness and an artist. An artist, okay, sometimes you can't, because they play it's the same role.
They're always gaming.
But what I'm saying is someone who's severely mentally ill cannot break that character that they were trying to be. Yeah. Where a professional actor will break that character eventually.
Yeah, for sure.
But isn't it weird how there's a blurred line between being actually mentally ill and being an artist?
Well, yeah, I guess there is a parallel there. I don't know if you'd say a line, a blurred line. It might be two parallel blurred lines because they're parallel. No, but I feel definitely actors, or especially character actors, it is almost a form of a psychosis or a
right.
Definitely. And you put yourself there, though. That's the
self-inhabited therapy.
Yeah, self-inhabited.
Not even therapy. Yeah, self-inhabited psychosis.
Self-induced psychosis.
There you are. Say it one more time.
Self-induced psychosis. Wouldn't that be about Oh, fairly correct, I guess.
No, that's 100%. I couldn't word it any better.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on, we'll say. But yeah, there has to be. But you're doing this to yourself. It's almost like why a lot of the best character actors always they die of drugs. Or
Well, and the ego death. This is one thing I've always, when I was younger, and going back to your point on a few years ago, I would do a very, almost as if I was channeling Hunter S. Thompson.
yeah, for sure.
And what I mean by channeling is I was to the point where I was like in an unconscious stupor, but I was channeling this. You know what? You describe it. You probably have a better description than I do because my description would be bias.
Well, I don't know if it was. I don't know if I should explain every detail of.
Well, no, just the generalized.
Right. Well, I guess it was kind of like different states. It was like always definitely after work, and we were always going out to do things. But I guess it was you just somehow always acted like Hunter S. Thompson. Like somehow it was in it again, like you say, it wasn't you necessarily. It was definitely you say a channeling, but you weren't Joel at that. I'm sorry, you weren't Ether Hawkins at that point. Shoot. But
so many personalities.
Oh my god. But it's true. Like you weren't you at that point. It wasn't and it wasn't on purpose, I don't think. You just got to that point.
But this is, as an artist, it's slightly on purpose. I'm consciously developing these entertaining personas for my friends.
That was your shit at the time, though. You were definitely super into Hunter S. Thompson and gonzo journalism and just being definitely like showing you're that fucking free thinker, showing you can, you know what I mean? Like you're all, but that was very ego driven too.
Oh, and very dangerous in terms of the concoction that enabled.
Well, there was sometimes
the persona.
Yeah. It wasn't Hunter S. Thompson at sometimes either, but
no, and I see radio as another form. See, as an artist, I love to develop these concept archetypes. And sometimes my real personality penetrates or breaks through, but not always. Sometimes I try to stay in character. But it's to entertain people, because I feel as if you expose normal everyday people to a personification that isn't real, they start to question their own personifications. And what I mean by that is this type of character acting may invoke an ego death for somebody who's listening. And that sounds extreme, but what I mean by that, at least it starts to prod, it starts to poke at the idea that they are a conscious entity in a machine or a shell, and actually they can consciously rewrite who they are.
Are we going full circle about this Elon Musk thing?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I believe exactly right. Yeah,
and if that is absent from the popular conscious, we are going to fall into a slavery mentality.
Right. Well, people want to be lazy right now too, and this newest generation. We go back to the screens topic is. They think they have everything in the palm of their hand when they don't see anything in front of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I don't understand how this generation right under ours is gonna. Again with politics and with sciences and with something's gotta have to happen.
What do you think about stagecraft, Mr. Ritter? Since we are on this topic of artificially constructed personalities or imitations of personalities that we want to export to other people.
Stagecraft, you mean like
Stagecraft.
Like
The definition in
Shakespeare?
theater would be you've heard the old idiom, the whole world's a stage, by Mr. Shakespeare, right?
Right.
Well, it is. And what do you think about the political game being a theater production? And
Well,
the people who run are personas crafted to appeal to other people.
So what?
Stagecraft.
Basically, another way of looking at it is all the Hunger Games movies, right? Okay.
Yes.
And this is going to help other people see it, but
Relate to it.
so we all know who we wanted to win in the second movie, but in the first movie, we didn't know who we wanted to win because it was first time we saw it. But then they pushed us to a certain way, and then we knew who we wanted to win. I guess I don't even remember that much of the story. But basically, what I'm saying is, what you see on TV and what you see in this media is definitely, a lot of the times it's put out there, like you were saying, personas. It's they have to keep this fake persona going to make the TV show work. Everything's a production.
Right. Stagecraft, by definition.
Yeah.
You are on the stage, you are doing theater, and your job is to be in character every time the camera or the journalists are present.
Exactly.
And how do you defeat that? Like, as a political strategy, how do you even defeat that? Because it seems, just to put into perspective, you did a nice job with people who can relate to the Hunger Games. But going further, Johnny Depp or Daniel Day-Lewis, if you met those guys and they were staying in character and you didn't know who they were, would they be those characters to you? Probably, right?
Well,
so
yeah, I guess.
Are these political personalities that are bought and paid for, do they craft and do they stay in character for you? And do you know their real personality? Because it seems like whenever we find corruption charges or sexual scandals, we get a little glimpse, going back to Bill Cosby, episode 1.
Yeah,
we get a little glimpse into who they are.
You know what I'm thinking is, like, what if this is the first time, which we'll say Trump, this is the first time somebody's ever made money off their candidacy race or whatever. And
right.
What do you think about, like, the government? Like, they didn't have to mold anybody this time. They found somebody exactly the archetype they needed to have, right? They found the exact personality they needed to have to combat a completely opposite personality that they could have. Am I right?
Yeah, you're right. To construct a perfect paradigm, you have to have a real black candidate, not color-wise and skin, and a real white candidate. You need opposition.
No gray areas.
Exactly, because if you have gray areas, and the gray areas, you know what the gray areas are applied to, for instance, Bernie and Hillary Clinton. They have gray areas. You know why? Because they're on the same side. So it's up to the voter to be like, oh, they're both white candidates, and I'm not talking about color of skin. I'm just talking about a metaphysical black versus white, the yin and yang, to prompt each other up. Or prop, not prompt. I guess they do prompt things. But yeah, the gray area is for the same side, but you need two separate sides. And I covered this in one of my first Ether Hawkins report. I said that Trump is dangerous because people don't realize that he may just be the very first provocateur candidate. Right. And what I mean by that is he is on purpose going into this race to draw in the anti-establishment crowd,
Mm-hmm.
to get them to participate in politics. And Hillary Clinton, they're both crooked.
You know what's crazy though? It's like
Both sides are crooked, and they
the
play
more-
off each other to fool you.
I feel like the more hate, the more people vote.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the more controversy, the more involved people are.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's who we are nowadays.
Very sad.
It's terrible.
Because if people were critically thinking, there would be...
Well, they would see like there's two there. It is black and white. It's completely the opposite. It's black, white. It's completely black and white. All right. You have to see these. Both sides are very, we'll say, very well constructed to be very well opposites. Right.
And at the same time, you cannot blame the participants. You cannot blame the constituents because, okay, I think I wrote in a poem somewhere and I rapped under my other pseudonym, my rap pseudonym. I said, constituents fluent in being tribal, but not liable. You know what I mean?
Right.
They are always willing to follow the tribal agenda. They're easily, yes, they're easily just excited into a tribalized mentality, but then they never want to take liability for the candidate that they were putting their vote behind.
Right.
For instance, when Obama won, did we really see hope and change? We destabilized more Middle Eastern countries, and the national debt didn't decrease. Everything stayed the same from the Bush era. So that's what I'm saying. They're fluent and well-versed in being tribal, the constituency.
Mm-hmm.
But they are never, ever fluent in being liable. They never want to say, yeah, I was duped. Because that's hard for people to say, I'm an idiot.
Yeah. They don't want to accept failure. They don't want to put it out there that maybe they messed up or they actually failed this time. But guess what? What do you do when you fall down?
You get back up.
You get right back up. You keep on going.
And you look what you tripped over and you try to fix it.
But most people don't. They don't build off of that. They don't see.
Alert, blanket statement. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
you're right. Most people don't. They really don't.
They just get even more caught inside themselves, and they don't want to see. They don't want to see what they could have done better. They want to say they did it they did it better than anybody could do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
well, Mr. Ritter, how would you like to wrap up this this third episode of Auditory Osmosis? And you know what? Your photo. Go ahead.
My photo?
Well, I was just saying your photo should be used as a thumbnail for this next video because it's brilliant.
It's pretty cool. It is osmosis. What questions do you have for me this evening? Did we ever find out who she was yet?
No, that's a listener challenge.
Yeah, I know.
I'm waiting for the listeners to respond.
Damn.
I know they're out there.
Maybe you got the email. I don't know. So, yeah.
So, I mean, if you have an answer and you're afraid to go public in the
Remember,
comment section, we have auditoryosmosis@gmail.com.
Email.com. I think what I say, it was like 2024 or something like that. But by the time we'd actually figure out who she was.
I could see that.
But I feel like we need to make it sooner than that. So
if we can figure out who she is before 2020, I will be a very happy camper.
I thought it was this girl named Sarah, but I was wrong.
Yeah, what's up with that? What made you say Sarah?
Well, I just, you know, she just always says these dirty things.
Well, I always think of Jessica as a more provocative name.
Maybe Jessica would be better. Would she be
Jessica?
like, What color hair would she have?
I think she would be a brunette
Brunette?
by nature, but she dyes it all the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's a transformer.
Right. We can't, and again, we can't end this podcast on yoga pants.
No, that was tasteless, and we can't talk about yoga pants. But at the same time, man, yoga pants. But no.
Supposed to talk about yoga pants.
Well, what do you think the next episode of Auditory Osmosis? We don't really plan these things out. Like,
we shouldn't plan them out. I think
no, it wouldn't be a podcast, and it wouldn't be.
Depending on when we do it, I could blab about Uriah Faber, hopefully, winning his fight this weekend, and then.
I think next episode you should do a UFC update.
UFC. Well, would have to do the UFC update. How about next week after this weekend's fights?
All right.
Okay, because then I could update and give you true numbers.
And eventually, if the listeners want to comment while we're doing these live broadcasts, I think that is available through YouTube. Go ahead and ask us a question.
Yeah, for sure. YouTube, or I don't know if can.
And when do you think we can finally give the viewers some video? I personally want to make our first video broadcast, the walking broadcast I've been hyping up.
Yeah, I think we should at least put in some.
We're going to show up one day with full HD video, and we're going to be walking the St. Croix River Valley, and we're going to be just doing our show.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to get that arranged for the listeners, but hopefully they take something away from this edition of Auditory Osmosis.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what do we always want? We want the listener to probe reality and try to figure out what's going on. And don't just be a surrogate, and don't just be a biological robot. Be a human, influenced by human things, and program this reality with us.
Yes. Using all those big words, let's think freely. Free thinkers. I said it again.
Free thinkers. Unite.
All right, Mr. Hawkins, it's bedtime.
It's been a pleasure, Mr. Ritter.
You have a good evening, sir. We'll see you in the next day.
See you in the ether.
Good evening.
Over and out. This has been Auditory Osmosis, Episode 3.